Star Trek, the next generation. You love throughout the nation. You're my favourite show. Was in every episode, you're lucky. You don't have to wait for buses. You just step into the transporter and off you boldly go. Mr. Wall's my favourite person.
We are the Org. Our mission is to assimilate Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and beer. Lots of beer.
Hello, friend.
Hello, sorry, I was drinking much needed beer after watching a shitey episode of Shitey Shite.
Oh, well, don't give any hint.
What? Like, people don't know that Rascals is crap when I already said that it had young children in it, and when you said including Keiko in our last podcast, I went, oh fuck.
Maybe possibly showed your hand a bit then, yes.
Yeah.
But more of that later.
I'm going to just drink beer while you do some general stuff.
Welcome to bOrgCast 6.7. I'm Peter. The one with a beer in the mouth is Anne-Marie.
Hello.
I'm just going to do that all the way through the podcast now. Shall we have some news?
Yeah.
Give you a chance to catch up with your beer. The visor has taken a step closer to reality, and there's now a pair of smart glasses, although I think glasses is possibly doesn't really describe what they look like. I mean, they're huge. If you thought the visor looked a bit odd and impractical, that's nothing to what this thing looks like. It looks like somebody's basically wearing one of the new big DSs strapped to their face.
No.
But if it enables people who are very poorly sighted to be able to see, I guess that's well worth it.
Yes.
On its way towards becoming the Alice band of the future. Also, you may have come across this already, pixeltrek.com is a rather fun little game. It's very early stages at the moment, so apparently it's supposed to be buggy, but basically you sort of wander around the Enterprise. I think you play data and...
Is that the one with all the toilets in it?
That,
talks
yes.
about On Edge of Forever?
Yes, it's got toilets in it. We knew there was a toilet, well, we didn't know because we never saw it, but it was always rumoured there was a toilet just off the captain's ready room. But other than that, you've never seen a single toilet in The Next Generation.
You see, that's going to ruin it for me, because in my imagination, the fish tank was the cistern, and when he flushed the chain, the water came down and the tank filled up, and he refilled the tank at the same time as flushing the chain.
Poor fish.
No, you're supposed to siphon off a third of the water on a regular basis.
Oh, right, so it was water going from the tank to the loo.
Yes, and then
not the other way around.
But then replenishing the tank, and therefore siphoning off a third of the water on a regular basis. You see, it was a neat design in my brain.
You've got this all worked out, haven't you?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's rather fun, well worth a look. Yes, if you want to have a look at that, Fatbone Smith put the link up Geek Planet Online forum in the bOrgCast section. Thank you, Fatbone Smith.
Thank you.
We've had some general feedback from the last podcast. Sampo wanted the full Y-Wing lecture. Sadly, it got lost in the editing. There was at least 5 minutes I just deleted. A lot of it was me doing hand gestures.
It was actually. It never would have worked.
No,
he was trying to make. He was trying to make shapes.
Yeah, with my hands, which just doesn't work in audio. But there we are.
No.
Cheeky Monkey Gin wants a Forehead Watch jingle, bringing back the Crime Watch music I used to use from Wheaton Watch. You never know, might use that one. Daz Watford enjoys our going off on tangents, apparently.
Oh, that's a relief.
Just as well.
Given how often we do it.
And hello to Grant, a.k.a. at Cult of Morbius on the Twitters, who's recently started listening, I believe.
Oh, hello.
Well, there you are. That's the news. I can't put it off anymore.
Well, you say that, but didn't we get a tweet from Siren Shane saying he'd listened to our last episode and wanted to take us to a karaoke bar?
Oh, he did, yes. So well remembered. And clearly he's never actually heard you do your pièce de résistance.
No, he won't have heard me doing Delilah and Octango in my natural voice, no. But I'm presuming he was suitably impressed with my MC Hammer, and that's what promoted it.
Hard to believe, but there we go. Anything else you want to come up with to put us off doing Rascals?
Oh, anything. Beer. Beer is nice, but beer is good. I've drunk half a pint.
No.
I've still got some more to drink.
No, we're not having beer watch.
No, beer watch.
No.
Yay! Yay!
Run the trailer.
Watch is good.
A transporter malfunction transforms the crew into children.
Are you here to relieve me of duty? I am still Jean-Luc Picard.
and a powerless young captain is about to lose his ship to hostile aliens.
Computer, deactivate all command functions. Authorization Riker Omega-3.
We have secured the bridge.
Stripped of command, can Picard stop a savage attack?
I will execute every child on this ship.
On Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Well, that made it seem a more interesting episode than it was.
Yes, it was stripped of an awful lot of padding, it has to be said.
Yeah, it was like the opening teaser, and then the last third.
Yeah, it takes a long while for the Ferengi to turn up, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to make this as brief as possible. You've got Ro, Keiko, Guinan and Picard in a shuttle.
Hey, ain't all about spaceships time!
Now it's time to get anal about spaceships.
Woohoo! This is the Thermes, which was seen in the background of the last episode as a full-size
As
prop.
opposed to Softy.
Yes, I suppose so, yeah. The Softy sounds more like an ice cream van than the shuttlecraft, so they went for Fermi, as in Enrico Fermi, who's a 20th century Italian physicist, does stuff with quarks and things like that. No, not the Ferengi.
Okay. How is it different from any of the other boxes that are called shuttlecraft?
This is I think a Type 6. The interesting thing that struck me about this one was the fact that normally there's only 2 seats. You got your passenger and someone sat next to them. But here, also, you got 4 people. The other 2 have somewhere to sit. So there
Look
these
like
weird
boxes with cushions on.
Well, they looked like they were like drawers that pulled out the side of the shuttle. So there's no backs on them at all.
No.
I hope it wasn't a long journey because it would have been ever so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Madness. No wonder they came up with the runabout because, that just didn't look comfortable at all.
No. Picard is squeeing over Marlonian cookware.
Oh, it's nice to see him being enthusiastic about archaeology again. They've kind of brought that back, haven't they? That's good.
Yeah, and then Rose says something about plants.
Yeah.
And then Keiko's like, oh, are you interested in plant biology? And Ro clearly isn't. Nobody would be.
Rose got a new do.
Give me a head with hair, long, beautiful hair, shining, gleaming, streaming, flaxen, waxen. Give me down to there, shoulder length longer. Here, baby, there, mama, everywhere, daddy, daddy. Throw it, show it, long as I can blow in my hair.
Oh, didn't notice.
Yeah, it's back with the Alice band.
That's probably why I didn't notice, because it's a return to
Except
similar.
the haircut is more severe now, and she's got much more pronounced Vulcan sideburns.
Yeah.
She really does look like, if it wasn't for the nose ridges, she would be the spit of a Vulcan in this.
Yeah. Then Worf says there's a distress call, so they're going to rendezvous with the shuttle, and then swirly thing alert!
I hate to go all technical on you, but all hands on deck, swirly thing alert!
Yes, good old cat.
You've got them trying to beam them back up, and then you've got O'Brien, right? Yep. And he's doing the beaming, and his wife is on the shuttle, and then, really blasé, he goes, 40% mass drop, I might have lost one of them. That one you've lost might be your wife, And he doesn't seem at all...
Well, no, the face looks worried, but the way he says it isn't. It's him being professional.
Oh.
Which, considering it involves his wife. But then again, maybe he doesn't want his wife to survive.
Yeah. Maybe he's slightly happy.
Well, this is his, Cole Meany's, and who plays Keiko?
Rosalind Chow?
Thank you. It's their last Next Generation appearances. Deep Space Nine starts next week in real time, effectively, although we cheated and started a bit early. And later on, of course, we'll get introduced to Molly, who will then transfer over to Deep Space Nine as well.
Hooray.
Yes, you can't wait, can you?
No.
Is this Trek's daftest teaser? Them all appearing as kids? It's like extreme close-up to make this seem tense, and it's just like, that's just daft.
Yeah. No, I'm afraid I just went, oh, fuck. I have to say that if I wasn't watching it for a podcast, and I was just like a casual viewer, I would go, fuck that, and I wouldn't watch anymore.
Yeah, and this will be a reoccurring theme. It's silly. Very, very silly.
Apparently they're physically children but not cognitively. So they're adults in child bodies. They're getting odd looks from everybody, understandably. The whole thing is fucking creepy. You
got David Tristan Birkin, who's playing young Picard. Did he seem at all familiar to you?
Well, he reminded me of James McAvoy.
Well, yeah, he does look strikingly like James McAvoy, which is amazing when you consider that, of course, James McAvoy plays the young Charles Xavier,
Yeah.
played by Patrick Stewart.
I know. Just,
It's like,
what?
wow. If you don't believe me, I'm going to put up a Tumblr picture quite soon of the 3 ages of Picard, basically. And it's uncanny,
isn't it?
Yeah. Particularly there's later on there's a shot where he runs his hand through his hair.
Yeah.
And that's McAvoy.
Yes.
What did they do? Anyway, David Tristan Birkin is actually played René Picard in Family.
Oh,
the
okay.
nephew.
Yes, now that you mention it, I can see it actually. But I was so struck by the James McAvoy likeness that everything else went out my head. To be honest.
The other point of interest is the actor that plays young Guinan, Isis J. Jones, also played the younger version of Whoopi Goldberg in Sister Act.
Oh, okay. It's been too long since I've seen that.
To be honest, I've never seen it, but
I've seen it about 3 times, I think. But it's been a long time since.
To be brutally honest, she's the best thing about this episode, I think.
Oh no, I found her fucking annoying.
Oh, I thought she was great. I mean, she got Whoopi Goldberg spot on. Oh,
yeah,
it was brilliant.
But I still wanted to slap her.
Oh, God, you're such a grump. Seriously, she's by miles the best thing about this episode.
No, nothing is.
Grumpy Bean, he's grumpy.
It was shit, and I had to watch it. And just because of the timing of our daughter going to Cubs we're having to record on a Wednesday, not a Thursday, I had to watch it without beer. Every now and again, my notes are interrupted by capital letters saying, "Where is my beer?" Anywho, Crusher comes in and gets him to step down by saying, "I don't want to ask you to step down, but I'm having to ask you to step down." And it's just like, oh, fuck off and tell him to step down and then just fuck off. In any event, it shouldn't be necessary because, as Squeaky Picard rightly says, there aren't yet cognitive, he's still got all his experience and his skills and everything, and there's not yet any sign that they're going to deteriorate. And she's like, well, no, but they might. Well, in that case, you wait until they do.
I think there is a point. I mean, obviously there is a slight issue about people taking him seriously, but yeah, if he's still got all his abilities, which he appears to have, it seems daft that he's
Yeah, I can understand her saying, watch it, and I could also understand that perhaps they could come to an agreement whereby Picard says, if you tell me that I'm not on the ball, that you can see signs of deterioration, then just tell me, and I'm telling you now I will step aside. That's the conversation you would expect to have.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that made me cross. Then Guygan's like,
Guigan?
I don't know.
Is that the alien version of Guinan?
I think, do you know what it is? She reminded me so fucking much of Jar Jar Binks. I've conflated Gungan with Guinan. Are we going to play Mr. 12? And then you get Ro going, just because I want to go and contemplate whatever it is, it doesn't mean I'm pouting. She says, you are pouting. And then you get all that bollocks about jumping on the bed. And it's like, if you're cognitively 700 and whatever the fuck it is, you're not going to go jumping on beds because, oh, look, I'm 12 now.
It seemed to me that was exactly what Guinan would do. It was completely in keeping with the character. She's done it before with, obviously not jumping on beds, but to a lesser extent with Ro, trying to get her out of her shell and stuff. It was Ensign Ro, wasn't it? Ro had told everybody else to get lost, and then Guinan comes over and tells her to get lost, and she says, well, basically, no, because you don't want to be alone because you're in the bar. And there's that thing where she's trying to get her out of her shell, and here she's doing exactly the same thing, and she's kind of giving her a childhood. This is the one bit of the story that's worth watching it for.
No, I just found her really annoying.
No, I liked it, but there you go.
Because Picard would be incredibly patronised if he was told, be like a child, if you're cognitively an adult.
Well, I mean, he admitted not so long ago, didn't he, that he didn't have a childhood as well, so maybe he could have done with it. Oh.
It's annoying.
You're a grump.
It's patronising is the problem, and the way that this is all written, she just reminds me, she's too bouncy and reminds me too much of Jar Jar Binks. So she's Guinan Binks now. Anyway, then you get really, really awkward scenes between O'Brien and Keiko. But I have to say, Cole Meany plays it really well.
He's great, isn't he? Yes.
He is. I think that's probably is the good bit.
That's another good bit for me as well, yeah. I mean, those sort of questions that need to be asked. How can we still be married when you're 10? Oh, I'm actually more like 13. It's like, yeah, that's not really the point, darling.
No.
And, and they're sort of sitting awkwardly next to one another. Oh, it's like, oh. And then, of course, Molly doesn't recognise her mum.
Yeah.
Oh. But worth exploring. I mean, if they'd not done that, it'd have been another crew member that didn't have a family. They'd been missing out on. It's a silly premise, but at least this explores a serious element to it. Anyway.
Yeah, and for me, although that is really awkward, it's well played.
Yeah.
And then you've got Picard playing with his hair. Mm-hmm. Because, of course, he doesn't have hair as an adult. I'm surprised he didn't go straight to Mott's.
Novelty.
Get it dyed rainbow colours or something, And then he has a totally unnecessary conversation with the counsellor, whose hair is awful. She fucking needs to go to Mott's.
But it has a good line in it about she's suggesting what he might do with his future, basically, and she suggests that he might go back to the academy and take Latin or something, do a different specialism. He's like, "What? Become Wesley Crusher's roommate? No, thank you." So he has a point there.
Yeah, he does, but it shouldn't be necessary because it should be bloody obvious that what he's going to do is archaeology.
Well, yeah.
If he can't be a captain, that's what he's going to do for a bit and then be a captain again. But again, he should actually be able to be a captain because they should be able to get everybody everywhere to readjust his Starfleet profile and everybody know that
he could be quite a useful secret weapon, effectively.
Yeah.
Because the Romulans are causing trouble and the Enterprise hails them and they see on the view screen it's being captained by this child, they'll immediately underestimate him.
Yeah, exactly.
But if he's still functioning, with the intellect of Captain Picard, he'll run rings around them. So they missed a trick there, really.
Yeah, and basically, they shouldn't have done any of that. They shouldn't have relieved him of command. And this whole thing, well, people will adjust, but other people will find it difficult. Well, then you educate the other people, don't you? Duh. So that made me cross. Then there's some techno-babble bollocks about RVN. I don't know if RVN is real or made up. I'm past caring. Yeah,
I could have Googled it, but I couldn't be arsed. I mean, medical technobabble is always the worst for me. The engineering stuff and the physics stuff, kind of like, okay, you expect that to be. But when it gets to medical technobabble, it's like, oh, please.
Yeah. Then my notes say, where is my beer? Oh, look, it's a transporter path and buffer fix. We're back to Pulaski being old again.
Oh, yes, very dangerous. Here we're using the transporter as an easy fix. I mean, Crusher comes out with because they did it with a plant or something, didn't they? And Riker says, well, I don't suppose it'll be that easy with humans. She said, well, no, we need to find out what the origin is. But the implication is, yes, they're going to end up using a transporter. Yeah. So, I mean, clearly they're going to reset at the end anyway, although there's an interesting coda to that. But ultimately, the transport is such an easy fix for this sort of thing that it takes any tension away.
Yep. And then in the cargo bay, there's some blokes in overalls moving bits of broken shuttle around, and you've got Geordie using his visor to see things that other people can't, and he says this is titanium alloy, and then it crumbles in his hands, and he went, it's been changed. So he picks it up and puts it in an egg box.
A sci-fi egg box?
Yes, but it's still an egg box.
Starfleet logo on it.
But it's an egg box. And then you get that awful scene I alluded to before. I know you're a jumper. Let's jumping on the bed.
There is a mention of Guinan's Tarkasian razor beast that she last mentioned in Imaginary Friend.
Yes, except she doesn't pronounce it correctly. Right. She says Tarkasian when previously in the previous episodes it was pronounced Tarkasian. And she should know because it was hers, supposedly. Yeah.
Well, now she's being played by this kid, isn't she? So that's maybe why.
Yeah, fine. Anyway, so now they're 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed. That's not what 10 or 12-year-olds do, okay? That's what 3-year-olds do. Then my notes say, when does this finish? And then they can't find the science team. There's no evidence of a volcanic eruption. And then suddenly 2 Klingon birds of prey appear and start firing at them. But there's no attempt to hail, even though that's what they should be, because they're allies. And then the 2 birds of prey basically shoot the shit out of Enterprise, which isn't particularly...
Really slowly in reused footage from yesterday's Enterprise, which we commented at the time looked really slow, and here they are using it again. It's like, oh boy.
Yeah.
They're being attacked by stock footage. Oh no!
Yeah. And it turns out to be Ferengi.
Yeah, just to make it even worse. I mean, bad enough it had been,
this is
2 Klingon birds of prey suddenly overwhelm the Enterprise in no time flat. But no, it's worse than that. It's 2 Klingon birds of prey with a bunch of Ferengi on board.
No. Worf gets prawned.
I am not the shrimp. I'm making prawns.
Then they take over the ship, even though there's only 6 of them.
Yeah, that's about the most you see, isn't it?
Not believable at all.
It's rubbish, and it makes Riker to be the world's most useless captain. No wonder they never give him a command. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, it's ridiculous.
And this is, the flagship of the Federation. There is no way that 2 birds of prey could do that to it.
No.
Particularly not 2 birds of prey, being piloted by Ferengi. It's just not credible at all.
No.
And then the way as you say, it's only a handful of Ferengi seen on screen at any one time. I mean, it's like 2 of them take the bridge.
Well, when they rounded towards the end, when they're rounding them up, there are 6.
Yeah.
I counted.
But you've got how many crew? About half a dozen, 8 crew, including Worf on the bridge, but 2 Ferengi somehow managed to overpower them all.
Yeah.
It's pathetic.
It's ridiculous.
And it made worse the fact that Riker immediately, as soon as they beam aboard, hits the deck, but nobody's actually firing at him. So it just makes him out to be a complete coward as well.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
If I'd have been Frakes, I'd have been absolutely appalled at the way his character's treated in this episode.
See, I wondered whether Frakes thought that one of the Ferengi was supposed to fire at him.
It does look a bit like there should have been a beam imposed, but
yes, but it's not there.
It's not there, so what you get instead is Riker going, "Oh, the carpet, on the carpet!"
Yes.
It's just, what? Shall we mention who's at the con? Shall we break off for a bit of an entertaining diversion?
You talk, I beer.
And now it's time for Who's at the Con? Now, I love this. Well, I laughed my head off when I discovered this. Okay, so who's at the con? Well, not very exciting. It's an unnamed ensign. You think there'd be nothing in there, but I did my check-in on Memory Alpha, and she's one of the regular background walk-ons. She's played by somebody called Christy Hayden. And it turns out she was a tour drummer for Sparks! Hey! Now you're looking at me blankly. Am I going to have to play some Sparks?
Yeah, I've got no clue. What?
Okay. Sparks, one of the greatest bands of the late 70s, early 80s maybe. I mean, they were through to the 90s, and it was the 90s she was playing with them, and that wasn't their best era, it has to be said. The keyboard player is very famous from his Top of the Pops appearances, because he looked like Adolf Hitler, complete with a moustache, and stared at the camera really weirdly.
Right.
Still looking blankly. Can't believe you've never heard that before.
It's terrible.
It's brilliant. Sparks are excellent, man. Well, admittedly, by the time she joined the band in the 90s, they weren't so good. About the best of theirs that era was When Do I Get to Sing My Way? But the best thing about that actually is the video, where the brothers Mail actually, we see them as children, which is kind of a nice little connection. And Christy appears in the video for that as well.
Right.
And that little factoid is by far and away the most interesting thing about this episode.
Oh, yeah.
A non-talking background extra was, at one point, a member of Sparks.
Yeah. Then my notes say, Guinan is annoying.
Oh.
Then we have Riker having a go at the Ferengi for using the science team as slave labour. Yeah, like you paid them.
No, but they were doing that voluntarily because that's what they felt called to do. That is a bit different to what the Ferengi are making them do.
Yeah, I know, but even so.
The Ferengi's birds of prey, by the way, are...
Bird of prey. Bird of prey. Flying high. Flying high.
Very good. They're classified as Burrell, which is the first time we hear this classification, and apparently, as opposed to Cavort, these are the smaller Scout class versions, but they look exactly the same as the larger versions, strangely, since they're reusing old footage.
Yeah. Then you've got Picard and the fishy computer. Spell Enterprise. E-N-D-E-R-P-R-I-S.
Stop it! No! That is too freaky. It does look like the Babelfish, I thought, from Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yeah, probably. Then they borrow Alexander's toy. Although the toy doesn't seem to actually do anything apart from drive around.
Oh, he's Cybermat. He's remote control Cybermat.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre design, isn't it?
Weird.
It looks like absolutely nothing.
No,
It's
I know.
just a sort of blob. He's a remote control blob. The closest thing it looks like is a Cybermat. Weird.
And then you have James McAvoy faking a tantrum in order to get to the bridge.
That's not so good.
And then you have, as my notes say, cheesy bollocks. with Riker.
Sounds like a very bad porn film.
Cheesy bollocks with Riker. I'll tell you what, I'd watch that over this shit.
Come and lick my cheese, counsellor. Just let me slide my leg over this chair. There's a break in filming as these cheesy bollocks get stuck to the back of the chair. We're making a far better episode, aren't we?
We are. So then Picard basically gets Riker to understand that unlock the computer in schoolroom 8. And then you've got Damon, who's basically behaving like the cat in Red Dwarf.
I'm going to eat you, little fishy. I'm going to eat you, little fishy. 'Cause I like little fish.
Yeah, he's got his eyes on... I can't remember the name of that fish now.
Lionfish.
The lionfish. It did have a name, I seem to remember, but I can't remember what it was. Yes. A lot of the Ferengi, including him, are played by actors who've played Ferengi before, but it's really not that interesting because they're not ones we'll see again. So
no,
they're not the best Ferengi. Not only have we got, Ferengi being the bad guys, but it's like the B-list Ferengi at that.
Yeah. But one of the Ferengi does make an important point. It is cruel to put children in danger by bringing them aboard a starship.
Yeah, that's the Damon, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah.
I'm with the Ferengi at that point. So then the 4 pseudo-children run around putting communicators on Ferengi and beaming them to a transporter pad.
So suddenly, this half a dozen Ferengi were able to take the whole Enterprise, and now they're having rings run around them by 5 children, effectively, because Alexander joins in the fun as well.
Yeah.
So they made the bad guys Ferengi. They had to be pathetic in order for the kids to win out. But that then created the problem. It makes Riker and the rest of them look really... clearly you take those 4 kids out of the equation and turn them into kids. Suddenly the Enterprise becomes pathetic. So I wonder they let Keiko leave, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Blimey.
Eventually it's all sorted, it's all fixed. What a bloody surprise. There is a nice touch, though, when Patrick Stewart gets on the transporter pad and runs his hand over his bald head.
Yes.
That's nice. I like that. And then Ro decides she'd rather do colouring than get herself fixed.
Yes, and this is what I was alluding to earlier, that there was a thought at one point that they maybe would leave her as a child, bizarrely.
Oh, please.
I know. Would have been a very odd decision.
Oh, bloody weird. I never thought about colouring my marmy before. You're supposed to be 12. You wouldn't be colouring pictures of your marmy and then not wanting to be an adult if cognitively you were an adult.
Yeah.
So, basically...
Silly. Very, very silly.
Thing is, silly can be funny. This isn't. This is just shite. So, yeah, it's massive jizz piddle. I'm going to have more beer.
Apparently there's an animated series episode in which a similar thing happens to the original Enterprise crew. That'll be a reason why I won't be chasing down the animated series then.
Oh,
and if that's what you're using for your inspiration for next gen episodes by Series 6, maybe it's time to start winding up the series. I can't help feeling.
Yeah.
To give him his due, the writer, which I think was Ronald D. Moore, wasn't greatly happy to have to write this it was based on another writer's pitch, and cringed at how the Ferengi succeeded with a couple of birds of prey. Should have found a better way then, really, shouldn't you?
Yeah.
Ferengi as comedy baddies again, just as we're about to see them in a far different light to Deep Space Nine. Not a good plan.
Nope.
Young Picard's voice isn't quite right. I don't quite like his performance, but he's trying very hard with the physical mannerisms to give his due. And I liked young Guinan, even if you didn't.
No.
The other two, particularly Keiko, the young Keiko, don't really get much. She's barely in it, really. You kind of wonder why they bothered with. Well, the only reason they bothered with her was for that awkward scene with O'Brien, which is one of the better parts of the episode, we pointed out. It's not dull. I didn't find it boring. There's plenty of action. The problem is that action is very silly. Very, very silly. And you found it positively annoying.
Yes. Made me want to kill
people. There was much deep sighing going on as the episodes played out.
Yeah.
Shall we find out what everybody else thought?
Yes, that's a good idea.
Right. So we heard from Cheeky Monkey Jin. He says, hello. I realise I may be in the minority. See what he did there? Works a bit better in print than it does in audio but I quite like this one. It reminds me of the video for The Miracle by Queen, where they used children to perform as mini members of the group. Cue The Miracle by Queen. Oh, do we have to?
Yeah! The wonders of this world.
The mini Keiko Miles scene was really uncomfortable to watch, though. Yeah, it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I know the writers considered leaving Rose a child permanently. However, it would have been great if they left Guinan as a minor. They would not have had to use the character so sparingly due to Whoopi's schedule. That's a good point. Yeah. And Guinan could have been a more regular character. It's not as if she's serving real alcohol after all. Yes. Laters. All right. Oh, laters, Mr. Cheeky Monkey Jim. So yeah, there's somebody who liked it for starters. Are we going to be completely going against the flow again?
Quite possibly.
Let's find out what the Mark made of this episode.
And the Mark writes, Rascals or Trek Confessions? Forgive me, Orgs, for I have sinned.
Right. Come to the right place. We specialise in sin.
I know a transporter screw-up turns 4 crew into children is silly. I know pre-teen Lolita Keiko is just creepy. I know Rose childhood abuse under the occupation cannot be cured by jumping on the bed. Good point. I know the Ferengi are so stupid that after taking a colony world for slaves and capturing the flagship that kids beat them.
Yeah.
I know the fact that the ability to make humans live forever by repeating the accident never being used again. I know RVN is bullshit. There's no such thing in genetics, and the writers pulled it directly out of their arse.
Yeah, you could kind of tell.
And yet I loved it as a kid and still do 20 odd years down the line.
Blimey, that's a whole load of hell Deannas.
Oh dear, what's the second line?
Hell Deanna full of boobs. Sorry, just where my mind went to. Oh dear. Can we forgive him? Yes, I expect we can, particularly since I bet we're going to be in the minority.
And he hasn't finished.
Oh, sorry.
You got distracted by Deanna's boobs.
Not for the last time.
He says, the young version of Picard is decent. He's my number one dad is just funny.
No, it's cringy.
The rest of the kids are not bad either. They could have been worse, I'll give you that.
Yeah, no.
They could have been worse.
They're all right.
They're not like Wooden Boy from whatever that episode was.
No. We've seen far worse child actors on Star Trek.
We have, yes.
Fair enough on that front.
Yep. Troy's scene with Picard about getting a second childhood without all the pain, etc. It was fun, and honestly I can't ask for more than that. Silly but entertaining. Brig of Shun for me, I suppose.
The Brig of Shun. Well, we'll just have to see, because it may be us going to the Brig of Shun.
It might.
Okay, who else have we heard from? Oh, we've heard from Brandy. Yes, I made it before the deadline. And please say hello to Purry for me. I love how he's just rolled with the rebranding. What a good sport. So yeah, Rascals. Sigh.
Yay! Somebody else is sighing.
I must admit I was not looking forward to rewatching this episode, as I had not seen it since its first airing over, oh dear God, 20 years ago. And I didn't have fond memories. But I have to say it wasn't as bad as I remembered. Yes, it's silly. Yes, there is a lot of technobabble to explain how 4 crew members could end up as kids again. Yes, there is yet another situation that could be fixed by reconfiguring the transporters. Troi still has a horrid poodle hair.
She does, right, it's awful.
And the Ferengi? Really? I know they're annoying little bastards, but this particular group are far too ruthless, yet still stupid.
Yep.
Yeah, the ruthless bit would be fine. It's like Ferengi pirates. It's kind of a nice idea. But then they just end up being as stupid as the rest of Next Generation's Ferengi.
No, I know what it is. They're trying to be space pirates like that bloody awful kids show, and then there's just the 2 kids that they get to randomly joining the dancing at the end.
We all say...
Anyway, we're interrupting Brandy's here. So yes, but this particular group are far too ruthless yet still stupid to be believable even as rogue Ferengi. It would have made much more sense for them to be Romulans or even actual Klingons, but Ferengi, in broken down Klingon birds of prey, disabling the Enterprise, please. Well, as I said, they had to be Ferengi because they're the only people who could be beat by 4 kids. The children aren't as annoying as they could be, except for the young Keiko, played by Caroline Junko King. I didn't think it was possible to dislike the character Keiko more than I already did. I was wrong. Little Keiko is even more stilted and wooden than her adult counterpart. I half wish Miles had thrown up his hands and said he wanted a divorce. It brings up some interesting conflicts in theory, like what if Keiko couldn't be returned to her adult state? Frankly, though, given the fact that it was Keiko, I couldn't be bothered to care. Oh. Megan Parlin as young Ro is passable. She isn't always convincing, but she has her moments. Like when she's bitching about what she's supposed to do with her child body as she and Guinan are leaving sickbay. I believe her words were, "What the hell am I supposed to do now?" or something like that. I laughed out loud. She sounded so much more like an adult. The two standouts for me are Isis J. Jones as young Guinan. It's not just me. And David Birkin as young Picard. Both of them are believable as older minds trapped in younger bodies. Of course, we've seen David Birkin before as Rene Picard, John Luke's nephew. Their performances are good, except that if we're supposed to believe young Picard was 12, they must think we don't know anything about how puberty works for boys. That kid had to be at least 15 if he was a day. And he has a different eye colour than Patrick Stewart. Did they think we wouldn't notice? Well, to be fair, we didn't, but there you go. An interesting note, Isis Jones had already played a young Whoopi Goldberg in Sister Act, released earlier the same year as this episode. She was instantly recognisable to me the first time this aired. A few other things niggle. Like, why the hell Picard, Ro, Guinan and Keiko were the ones on shore leave at the same time? Doesn't that seem odd to anyone? Nah, well, they're all there for different reasons, weren't they? So we can live with that. When O'Brien is watching Keiko reaching for something on a shelf in their quarters, it's obvious she could have reached the damn thing without getting something to stand on. Not convincing at all. The accident on the shuttle is also pretty lame, with everyone bouncing around in different directions in a very unbelievable way, and very waffly special effects. Yeah, you're right, actually, they weren't very special. That swirly thing was one of their less good efforts.
It'll be interesting to see whether it's better on the Blu-ray.
Yeah. Still, not the worst episode I've ever seen. Agreed. Hamry's not so sure. Certainly not the worst where children are the focus.
Actually, no. Wooden Boy.
Yeah.
That is the worst episode. Wooden Boy is the worst episode.
We always forget the name of that one. It comes up so many times, doesn't it?
Yes. It's awful.
And I still can't remember it now. But never mind.
But it's terrible. It really is bad.
So it gets a pass from me. I can't say I liked it, but I didn't hate it. It's more of a, oh, okay, so that happened sort of thing. So there we are, Rascals. And that's a shitty title, by the way. Yeah, fair point. Mm-hmm. Okay, we move to the MP3 feedback, and I guess it's time, for the first time this evening, to hear from Mr. Purry.
Hello, Purry.
Hi guys, Purry here to talk about the episode Rascals. Well, I did like this episode when I was younger. I think I did enjoy the sort of comedy episode, but age has not served it well. So the crew, well, not the crew, Picard, Ro, Guinan and Keiko get turned into children. It just seems like a plot that someone came up with, and they said, no, they'll get turned into kids, it'll be really fun, and they have to save the ship in kind of a kids capery kind of way. And the whole cast, whenever they're explaining what happened, and they do, well, when I say they come up with a feasible explanation, it is one where, this GNA thing, this thing came out, and that's why they're all reduced, why Guinan isn't just dropped 30 years and looks exactly the same, etc., etc. And instead they go, yes, this DNA sequence came out, and they're all kind of looking across and going, that's feasible. And it just, I mean, the cast actually do. You can see it behind their eyes. They really think, what the hell is this we're doing? And presumably Patrick Stewart's quite happily sitting on the sidelines going, I turned up for a bit at the beginning and the end and still get the paycheck. Ha 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 ha. So yeah, I mean, the basic kiddie plot is annoying. I did like the scene between Picard and Troy, Kid Picard and Troy is quite good. I do like him sort of bemoaning being Wesley Crusher's roommate, but aside from that, it's, I mean, I think what gets me is when we get into the actual meat of the episode, you know, they're initially it's just, oh, we're kids and that's bad, and I mean, the O'Brien scene with Keiko is just, just words escape me. But then they do get into the main plot where they go and get attacked by the Ferengi and the Klingon ships in what is one of the dullest space battles there is. There's a very nice shot of the Enterprise firing once, but don't the crew just seem inept? I mean, the Klingon ships kind of turn up and start firing at the Enterprise, and the Enterprise just sitting there doing nothing. I mean, what's up? I mean, okay, you know, I could get the idea that two of these ships might be able to face down the Enterprise, although I'm dubious about that and just what I know of the ships. But it's not just that; they're not commanded by Klingons; they're commanded by Ferengi, who are Again, if these were almost, if it was season 1 Ferengi to an extent, even though not really, when they were still trying to make them threatening, that would have worked. But we've had Ferengi as kind of inept comedy relief for years now, and to see them brought in and trying to be sinister, while at the same time also trying to be comedy relief, so they're sinister and scary when they manage to take control of the Enterprise, which is still beggaring belief, and then they become suddenly bumbling comedy relief when it requires a bunch of kids to defeat them. And I think that's part of the problem as well, is just those bits of the plot don't hang together. It was almost like, should we have Klingons? Well, how can we have Klingons be beaten by that? We need someone a bit weaker. What about the Ferengi? Okay, that'll work. But by that point they'd also said yes, and obviously they'll beam on and take the ship. It's just, it doesn't seem thought out. So yes, overall, or rather, as I would also say that the child acting is generally quite poor. The less said about the... Oh yeah, actually that was a bit that annoyed me. I was about to say the less said about Guinan and Ro the better, but that was a bit that really annoyed me. At the end of it, it's time for you to go into the transporter. Oh well, I've only drawn a picture of my mum, etc, etc. And you've suddenly got Guinan saying, well, the transporter will be there tomorrow. Now, I don't know about you, but if I didn't show up to my work, and the excuse I gave was, I was going to come to work, but I decided to stay at home and play with crayons instead, I'd be sacked. And I can't believe Picard would particularly take well to Ro saying, look, I would have become an adult and gone back to my duties, but I was quite enjoying the second childhood, so I thought I'd take a day or so. Is that okay? As I say, I think the problem is that this episode didn't entertain me as much as when I was younger, and as a result, I'm seeing a lot of flaws in it. And I think if once you start looking too hard at the episode at all, it completely falls apart and just becomes quite tedious. So yes, not a particularly good one. But I will be back to talk about The Passenger. Until then, bye for now.
Bye. Yeah, I think it's fair to say he wasn't impressed.
No, when you look at it, there are lots of flaws, and lots of flaws.
And I do agree. There are points when the actors look really embarrassed.
Yes,
it's like, really, we're resorting to this now.
Maybe that's why Jonathan Frakes threw himself to the floor. Maybe he was just crying into the carpet.
Yeah, the crew just look inept. There's no two ways about it. It's very sad. Yes. But a nice point about, Rose staying as a kid. I'm not going to come to work today, I'm colouring.
Yeah, I like that.
So, yes, definitely I'm looking at it with a very similar light to you, Anne-Marie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's find out what Drew and Tracy have made this.
Hello, this is our feedback for Star Trek Next Generation, Rascals. I think the first thing you're going to have to say, and I'm sure everyone will make this point, is the whole episode premise is rubbish, really, isn't it? There's no reason why the transporter loses 40% of mass and all the jargon they come out with, and all now that they're all young. But I think we just got to say straight away, let's just suspend our disbeliefs rather, and just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, exactly. When O'Brien was saying, oh, there was a 40% reduction in the mass, we've lost somebody, and they beamed on. Instantly, I was like, Picard's missing, And then all of a sudden, no, they're kids. And it was just a bit like, hey? What's that about? We did get excited when it was a battle, when the bird of prey appeared, and it was, oh my god, the Klingons are here! They're going to do some battle. And then it turned out that, they beamed them aboard, and it was the Ferengi.
I know, like, I mean, again...
What the fuck are you doing now? I want some Klingons!
I'm sure the point we made, but 2 Klingon birds of prey with Ferengi at the helm, and they just defeat the Enterprise, like the flagship, just like in 10 seconds.
Yeah, but you said...
And then the Ferengis, they beam on board, and Wolf misses, and they shoot him.
Exactly. Whatever. No, it was just a bit silly. I mean, you say when you went, 2 Klingon bird of preys against a flagship, no contest.
And then they defeat them.
Yeah, exactly. And we were like, what is going on? Yes. When Picard, we sort of realised that he was a child, the first thing when they spoke to him, I really, really wanted him to go, bonjour, monsieur.
Yeah.
I really wanted him to be French, but he was a very stereotypical British, you know, and it was just like, no.
Well, the thing is, and
give him a bit more character.
I've read this before. How do you know he's not speaking French all the time? Because they've all got universal translators in there.
Yeah, but I haven't. I speak English. I know what he's saying.
We're watching it like a dramatised version, but Wolf could be speaking Klingon and Jean-Luc Picard would be speaking French, but they only hear like English, and we hear English because
that's a very good point. But no Frenchie is going to go into his ready room and ask for Earl Grey tea. Hot. No.
Well, he's British French, isn't he? The best
what?
kind of
There
French.
is no such thing as British French, whatever.
Yeah, you would have thought Picard would have immediately realised there's no way he can stay in command of the crew like that. I mean, there's a little bit out of character, I think. When he just like carried on and it took Beverly to come up to him and sort of relieve him of duty without relieving him of duty.
No, hold your horses. Sorry, no, that's a typical man. I'm afraid.
Yeah, but not Picard. He's not
Even
the typical
Picard,
man.
no, you know, he came back onto the Enterprise, came back onto the bridge, resumed command. I know what I'm doing. In his mindset, he was Picard. It only took one look from Riker, really, to kind of put him in his place a little bit. But I do love the way Riker. He instantly gave him the respect of Picard, didn't he?
He did, yes.
Loved it.
That was sad when Keiko was rejected by Molly. But I tell you what, when Miles was saying, "Oh, don't worry, we'll sort this out," I was just like, "Yeah, you will sort it. You're the one who beamed her up. You're the one who lost the 40% mass."
We was laughing about this because he did really get the raw deal in this. You know, his wife comes back as a 10-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that means he's probably got an extra 20 years of Keiko, doesn't it?
But it was really strange, you know, when it's Keiko, and when she kind of cuddled up to him, you almost felt the tension that he kind of gave, and it was just like, we did sit here and go, awkward.
I know, in all seriousness, I think, again, you know, Miles Cole Meany is an excellent actor, and he was brilliant. It's a really good scene. So I really enjoyed that episode. Yes, it's really got big flaws in it, but I think it's got a bit of action, it's got a little bit of spaceships, it's got, you know, crew endangered, whatever you want to call it. It's good. It's an enjoyable romp, I'd say.
Yeah, it was alright.
Not something special, not a brilliant episode, but it's enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, it wasn't bad overall.
Great stuff.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, it's kind of like false advertising when the birds of prey turn up and Klingons. Yeah, suddenly this episode's going to take off, and then no, it's inept Ferengi.
Yeah.
Picard, of course, is Yorkshire French, as we know. Yeah, Cole Meany's acting is probably the best thing about it, but they seem to be able to sort of run with it in a way that certainly you couldn't, and I could only just about to an extent.
No, I just...
Yeah. It's a huge hurdle to overcome, the setup, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the double setup as well. It's not just that then getting turned into kids. That's weird enough. But then the Ferengi turning up and so easily conquering the Enterprise, but then having rings run around them.
It just doesn't.
It's like, really,
It's
they
a
should have
mess.
sat down and gone, "Now this isn't working, screw it up, put it in the bin. Let's do something else."
Put it in the bin.
Put
in the bin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not good.
No.
But you never know, Dimbo Simon might like it.
Hello, Orgs. Sorry for the lack of feedback last time, but, you know, real life and all that. Did catch last episode, though, and really enjoyed it. I do have a couple of quick things to say about Dax and True Q. First off, Dax was great. I loved it. Really great courtroom drama. Great twist at the end. And all the Odo stuff was really fun. I really, really loved it. And True Q was much, much better than I remember it being. It wasn't a great episode by any means, but it was pretty good, and it was really great to see Q back as an ominous presence after the ridiculousness of Q-less, so, you know. That was great as well. So, on the Rascals. So this was really dumb. Positives first. I really enjoyed the actors playing Guinan and Ro, although Guinan's whole "you need to embrace your childhood" shtick was awful. Like, holy shit, can you please not try and make Rose some grouchy sourpuss? She was a refugee from a 50-year violent occupation. If anyone is entitled to have a bad childhood, it's her. Like, come on. The whole awkwardness in the scene between Keiko and Miles was great as well. I quite enjoyed that. The fact that Keiko is trying to just go on with her life, but, you know, Miles can't cope with it because it's fucking weird. All the child actors were kind of awkward, and Keiko was awkward as well, but I think Keiko and Miles are just awkward in general, so that wasn't too big a an oversight. So that was pretty good. I have to say though, the actor playing Picard, who I'm sure Peter pointed out during your coverage, is played by the same actor who played Picard's nephew in Family, was awful. He slurred basically everything he said. He didn't have any presence, and he couldn't really act physically. He was supposed to be looking out the windows, feeling troubled, but he just looked bored, and like that's the death knell for his performance as far as I'm concerned. Not to mention that it didn't have any of Picard's mannerisms the same as Stewart's, which is what you really need to sell it. There's a Stargate SG-1 episode in Season 7 where they replace O'Neill with a younger clone of O'Neill, same basic premise, but like he's such a far better actor. He gets everything down really well, and you can, especially thinking on that when watching Rascals, it really makes Rascals seem even worse. But also Ferengi, please stop trying to make threatening Ferengi a thing, TNG. It's never going to be a thing, please. Deep Space Nine does a Ferengi so much better, so much more justice. Furthermore, one of my biggest bugbears with this, in the science of it, is that they become younger physically but not younger mentally, and that doesn't make sense because a large amount of the development of the brain is physical development. Like, it has to create certain pathways to think in certain manners. So if the entire body is regressed to a younger state, including presumably the brain tissue, then they would have the thought processes and neurological capability of their equivalent age. It's ridiculous. It's just dumb, like really, really dumb. But like not in an awful way. It was funny to watch, but I don't think I found it funny in the way they wanted me to find it funny, which I guess makes it a failure. So, yeah, it wasn't great, but mostly because it was stupid. But I still enjoyed it for what that's worth. Anyway, thanks for listening. I'll be back in just a minute with The Passenger. Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks, fella.
I agree it's dumb. But I didn't enjoy it at all.
Interesting point about Keiko and Miles being awkward usually anyway.
Yes.
So what's the big difference?
Yes.
I do disagree slightly with the performance by the young Picard. I did think he pulled off some of the marriages. We had a shirt pull at one point.
Yep.
And he got that sort of stiff posture, I thought, down to a fine art. But yeah, admittedly, he did look a bit vacant at times. I do agree with that. And yeah, that the science of this isn't...
Doesn't work.
It's not worth spending any time thinking about because clearly they didn't.
No.
Blimey.
Which, was it the Mark said they pulled it directly out of their
arses?
Yeah.
Yes, quite. Yeah. I think that sums it up quite nicely, doesn't it?
Yes.
So there we go. Some people got something out of the episode.
I didn't.
You and a few of us didn't. So there we go.
No.
Let's move on to our Deep Space Nine episode, The
Hooray!
Passenger.
Something else. I have no idea what this is about, by the way.
No memories?
Episode titles don't mean much to me anyway.
That should be your theme tune.
I'm just going to watch...
It is possible that you will, within minutes of this episode starting, you'll go, oh, it's that one.
Well, that happens a lot, to be fair.
Let's find out.
Yes.
Of all the forces in the universe, death has remained a mystery. But now, a psychopathic genius...
He is dead. He's alive.
That's impossible. ...has discovered the secret to immortality.
The body dies, the consciousness lives on.
In another brain.
And someone will inherit his murderous legacy.
I'm watching you.
And I'm watching you.
On the next Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Well, that's actually a remarkably good trailer. It's not spoilery.
No, I mean, the only bit it slightly gives away is the idea that this person's carrying on in somebody's brain.
Yeah, that it gives away, but not who.
Not who, to be fair, and it's not a major spoiler, I don't think. To be honest, I was a bit more spoilery when I described this episode in the last podcast as being about possession, which, had I remembered completely what the episode was like, I wouldn't have said, because that's far more spoilery than what Trailer Man just said. So apologies if it spoiled the episode for you. Our episode opens with Bashir and Kira on the Rio Grande.
Which, by the way, I have to say, is what he's named his new car.
Yay, I got me a runabout. It does look a little bit runabouty, you have to admit.
It happens to be silver and goes.
And it's got the same sort of proportions.
Has it?
Yes.
If you say so.
I say so.
You got to remember, I don't do 3D, do I? So I'm not going to know.
Anyway, Kira's being begrudgingly impressed with Dr. Ego before normality is restored, where basically he's done a really impressive thing. And she's like, well, that was actually quite impressive. He's like, yes, I know it was, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, but he's not just like that. He's like, I have a gift to be a healer. And it's like, oh, fuck off, you twat.
And she's like, she says, did anyone ever tell you you're at? And then they're interrupted.
Yes.
It's like a complete arsehole or whatever
Yes.
she's going to say. They get an SOS. Being on board a ship that we never see, annoyingly, but never mind, Bashir discovers an unconscious woman whom he brings round. He also detects another life form whom she refers to as being a dangerous prisoner, but Bashir goes in there anyway.
Well, yeah, Hippocratic Oath.
Kira turns up with a very impressive-looking fire extinguisher. It's huge!
Yeah, but where did she get the sparkly gloves from?
Don't know, but it looks very impressive. Prisoner comes round and immediately starts to throttle Bashir before dying himself. So it's a fairly action-packed start.
Yeah.
Impressive stuff. The woman who survives comes round in sickbay and introduces herself to Bashir as being Tai Kajada.
That's what I said when it appeared.
Yes, somehow we got into My Shiroda, so now
I don't know, but she's now Tai Kajada.
Oh, we're getting very tenuous with these musical links, aren't we? But
That's the way my brain works. It finds tenuous musical links. Sorry.
she's a Kobliad security officer. Woo. And she's played by somebody familiar. But
Is she? I didn't know.
well, she's under more makeup than this normally when we see her in
right?
Babylon 5 as Natov. It's Caitlin Brown.
Really?
Yes.
Bloody hell. I didn't know. I had no idea. No.
It's the voice more that gives it away. But
and that's the proper Natov. It's not
yes,
Notov.
It's not Notov. This is the
It's
actual
proper
Natov who returns in season 5. Yeah. Caitlin Brown will return in season 7 of Next Generation in Gambit's part 1 and 2.
Oh, now, okay. Now, in theory, I remember that episode of Next Gen, so in theory, I should have recognised her from that, even if I didn't recognise her from Babylon 5, and I fail. I suck. Sorry.
Kobliads have a forehead ridge.
Is this forehead watch?
Yeah, it's almost, but it's sort of more nose watch actually. It's sort of, there's a line that comes straight down, sort of bisects the forehead and comes right down the nose. Very odd, and makes her hair look odd as well. She asks after the prisoner, who's called Reo Vantikar, which is a very Star Trek name, Vantikar, and demands to see his body. Apparently, Vantikar's had the habit of faking his death. He's your stock mad scientist who's been killing others to prolong his life. She sticks a big dagger in him.
I quite like that.
And then asks for an autopsy. Well,
yeah. No, I like that. It's like being sure he's dead.
She does come across as being slightly crazed. Partly it's
She
the
does.
hair that hasn't been sorted since the rescue, but she's got a sort of wild look about her eyes. Very well played by Caitlin Brown, actually. Then we have a nice Odo Quark scene. Every episode needs its Odo Quark scene, and this is it. And this one revolves around the Ferengi's infatuation with Dax.
Oh, it's funny.
Odo tells Quark he's keeping close tabs on him due to a suspected shipment of Duridium coming to Deep Space Nine. Apparently we'll find out later on it's this that Vantika was after, as it helps prolong Kobliat lifespans, as they're a dying race. And then a member of Starfleet security criticises the changeling for giving away his suspicions. This is Lieutenant George Primin. Remember him?
No.
He was only in 2 episodes, this one and the next one. And he's very much O'Brien fill-in, because Cole Meany's away shooting a movie at this period in time, apparently. So we have, instead, Primin for 2 stories. He's kind of Deep Space Nine's answer to Roscoe P. Coltrane from the Dukes of Hazzard. He's got that southern accent, and he just made me think...
I'm Duke, boys. I got him this time. I got him this time. Ain't no way they're going to get by this rock block. I love it. I love it.
Never watched Dukes of Hazzard?
Yeah, but I was too young, and it just resulted in me getting my arse stuck
When
in
is that going to get a
window.
reboot? The A-Team got a reboot film. We need a Dukes of Hazzard reboot film.
We do.
Just the good old boys.
No, you did
my
know
parents
about
disapproved of me watching that because it involved people disobeying the law. Cool.
My parents complained because they had to break into their own car to rescue me because I had tried to climb in through a window, locked, and got my arse stuck.
As in the General Lee. Wow.
Yeah. Well, this was
I wonder
this
if
was a
that-
Vauxhall Chevette. I mean, this was...
I wonder how that series stands up. I wonder if it's just like horribly racist or something. I don't know. Dukes of Hazzard, particularly Americans, tell us what you think. It's been a long while since we've seen it, but it was a staple in this country, along with the A-Team.
Yeah.
It was another ITV staple, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Anyway, back to Deep Space Nine. Where were we? Oh, yes. Somebody called Michael Eddington will perform a similar role a bit later on in the beginning of
Remember
season
him?
3. Yes, you will remember him.
Yeah.
But
Well, I won't say anything. but I
Section
remember
31,
him.
keep quiet about him. Primin meets with Sisko, and as he's going in, Kira offers to let Odo know about the meeting as well, but the lieutenant tells her that he'll fill the changeling in on anything he needs to know. And Kira's face says it all. Who's in charge of security here?
Yeah.
Hang on. Primin tells Sisko he feels Odo isn't up to the job, but the commander points out that Deep Space Nine isn't a starship. It's hard to keep secrets here. He makes the point that Starfleet are guests here.
Yep.
And you get the impression he doesn't actually think all that much of the lieutenant. So why bring him on board? Has he been imposed by Starfleet?
That's the impression. I distinctly got the impression that Starfleet had told Sisko, you've got to have somebody.
Yeah.
That's the impression I got, anyway.
To give me his due, the lieutenant apologises to Odo and tries to sort of make up. And Odo's about to show off his plans when he effectively gets file 404 error.
He
file
does,
not found.
yes.
And the whole of the computer system goes kaboo. Oh dear. Odo alerts Kira. Everything's been purged. I hope they made backups. Kajada turns up and tells them Vantika has done this in the past. She's convinced he's alive despite the medical evidence. And again, she's coming across as slightly crazy at this point, but we know otherwise, don't we? He'll have done some shunt thing attached to another system to access the data, and Dax finds one on a temperature control. Both Primin and Odo do a tippy-tap to inform the rest of security. Again, why isn't there a proper chain of command here? This is silly. Kajada warns that there may be booby traps. Boobies. Sisko suggests an accomplice may be responsible, but Kajada insists that Vantika was obsessed with survival. Odo then offers his resignation. He'll do this again as well.
Yeah.
But Sisko professes his admiration of the constable in a rather sweet scene, and his confidence in Odo's knowledge of security on the station, but explains that this is all about Starfleet protecting its interests.
Which is logical, actually, because you've got Starfleet invited to come and run this station, but it's really Bajoran, and you can kind of understand the Federation going, yeah, actually, can we have our own security? Because you've got that thing, haven't you, with them that abduction with and it's like who's got a treaty with what and who and when from the episode Dax. You can kind of understand that sparked a conversation within the Federation.
Well, this is again highlighting that instance of the fact that because it's a Bajoran station, it makes the series a lot more interesting.
Yes.
Because it isn't the all-powerful Federation completely in control here.
Yeah.
And here they're playing second fiddle to an extent to Odo. Odo asks the only question that matters, who's in charge?
Yep.
And Sisko says, you are, basically, in joint operations, it's you. And it's like, right, I can live with that.
Yep.
Dax has discovered someone has tried to break into Kajada's ship since it's been docked. She's found what looks like a PlayStation 1 memory card in Vantika's quarters. And it turns out it contains a map of the humanoid brain.
Are you sure it's not a map from Hogs of War? Because that was on PlayStation 1,
Oh, I see what you mean. I see what you're getting at there. No. Quark is bossing his Ferengi cleaners about when he's accosted from behind, and a familiar whispery voice asks if he's made the preparations. Now, admittedly, obviously, I'd seen this before some years back, but the whispery voice went, yes, I know who's possessed now. But you didn't pick up on that, which is quite nice.
No.
The voice claims to be Vantika. Bashir meets with Kajada to break the news that the corpse they've got is definitely Vantika's. Dax then calls him to the lab and shows him the brain map thing. He surmises that Vantika could be occupying someone else's brain and suggests Kajada as a possibility. Sisko points out that doesn't make sense, but Bashir says that she may not be aware that he's in there. Odo demands that she's left out of security plans just in case. When Kajada challenges him on what kind of fool he is, Odo confesses to being his own special variety, which is a lovely line. He points out he always keeps an eye on Quark. This will be a recurring theme. The Ferengi is meeting with his mercenaries, which include Durg, a Markalian. We've met Markalians before now. One of them was the one that worked with Nog and got blatted by Odo in the pilot. He's played by Christopher Collins. He'll be back as another of the species in Season 2's Blood Oath. Kajada is observing them from an upper level, but she's pushed off We get a rare view of the ceiling of Quarks in the process. She falls from a great height. Bashir suggests she committed suicide as a result of carrying Vantika's consciousness. Meanwhile,
Which doesn't work.
Nah, it doesn't make sense, does it? Meanwhile, Dax is studying Vantika's body to confirm her theory that he delivered his consciousness via his fingernails.
Which is the point at which I guessed...
Got to be because he reached out and grabbed Bashir, yes.
Yeah.
But that's fine, because we've gone quite a long way at this point, haven't we? Anyway, this would give them something to look for in Kajada to see if Vantika is present. Quark is on the move with his mercenaries, and apparently their employer has access to a runabout. And upon arrival, they discover Bashir, whom we now know is Vantika.
Yeah.
Dax is also looking for the Doctor, but only finds his comm badge in the infirmary. They really should have sorted something out by now about how they trace people. Because the number of times this happened on The Next Generation where they've gone, find so-and-so, and then they just find the comm badge. It's like, come on, it's so easy to take the comm badge off.
Well, even on DS9, in whatever the episode was called, What Had Tosca did.
Yeah. Capture Pursuit,
right,
O'Brien does the same thing.
So Odo should have gone, that's a flaw in our systems.
Yeah.
We need something.
We need a tracer on people's underpants or something.
No.
Because you're not... Well, I suppose you could go around Commando, couldn't you?
Yes. Commando Sisko.
Commando Sisko. As he would now be referred to. You'll be begging for his promotion to captain by the end, I tell you. Commando Sisko.
Is that an episode title?
It could be. Could be. Anyway, Odo finds Primin, who's following Odo's logic and is checking non-essential systems for another shunt, finding one in the waste reclamation that could have shut down the station long enough for Vantika to escape. So well done, Primin.
He found it in the poo!
Yes. The Federation freighter Norkova arrives through the wormhole.
Now it's time to get anal about spaceships.
Woohoo! Now, this is an Antares class freighter, which is the same type of freighter that one Cassidy Yates will be flying a bit later on in the series. More of her much later on. The models are reused Tellurium freighter Batris from season 1's Heart of Glory, and it's a nice chunky model. I like it. It looks like a rig, a proper truck pulling a great big cargo, which is exactly the look they needed to go for. So very splendid. Odo compliments Primin, but then Kira detects the Rio Grande going out to meet the Norkova. Dax arrives at Ops with the news that Julian is missing. Aboard the bridge of the Norkova, we have the presumably civilian crew, with interestingly designed overalls. Captain is an older woman, not something you see often enough, but who then gets phased along with the rest of the crew by the mercenaries who beam aboard. And then Bashir as Vantika beams on as well. And this is where we get sort of Siddiq El-Fadil's slightly odd performance, being Vantika. I mean, obviously he's going for something different, but the way he just talks very slowly makes Vantika seem a bit dull, unfortunately. But there we are. The station locks the freighter in a tractor beam. Sisko hails and asks to speak to Bashir, who's apparently in there somewhere, but is threatened by Vantika unless they release the freighter. Commander asks for a transporter lock, and here Primin is definitely in the O'Brien role, as it's him manning O'Brien's station, telling Sisko that this isn't possible. Commando Sisko, turns to Dax for a way of disrupting Vantika's control of Julian, and she comes up with a technobabble solution using the tractor beam. Then Vantika threatens to go to warp and try and escape. Dirk calls him crazy and gets a phaser beam to the chest for his troubles. Dax's plan works long enough for Bashir to lower the shields, get transported to the bridge, and then gets stunned by Sisko. Dax then uses the transporter to isolate Vantika from Bashir's system. The transporter's to the rescue again!
Yeah.
Oh dear. Never mind. And he's transferred Vantika, that is, to a portable disk drive of some sort, which they give to Kajada, and she promptly phases him to destruction, which is a nice touch, so he ain't coming back.
Yeah.
I'd kind of like, obviously, sort of Vantika's a sort of presence without being present, if you see what I mean, because he's either, whispery voice in the background, or he's what Kajada's telling you about him. And then you've just got those few scenes at the end with Bashir playing him in that slightly stilted way. But ultimately, he's quite ruthless. He's clearly just out to, look after himself. You are slightly worried about what was going to happen to Bashir. He's quite a good villain. So in some ways, it's surprising that they do wipe him out, but it's a sort of satisfying ending to the story, isn't it?
And it's in keeping with Tai Kajada's character.
Yeah,
bearing in
it
mind
is.
that when
She's
she
all
stabbed
out
him
to
with
kill
a
him.
knife
Yeah.
before, the fact that she phases him at the end, it's logical, but it did make me question how precise phasers are, that she just zaps the thing and not what is resting.
Not the console underneath.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like Dax. Hey, my side slab, what are you doing? Interestingly, originally Kajada was the one who was going to be possessed, so she would have been unwittingly pursuing herself.
How bizarre.
Yes, a bizarre idea. I'm not sure that would have been effective as it being a character we know well, because we wouldn't have cared had Kajada been held hostage by Vantika effectively.
Yeah.
It needed to be one of the regulars.
Thing is, though, given how much of an arse Bashir is in the beginning of the episode, do we really care that it's Bashir?
Well, he eats humble pie at the end, doesn't he? He's like, oh, I've been such a fool, sort of thing, which is quite nice. Yeah. Vantika was apparently going to be more of a sort of Hannibal Lecter character. Ew, yes. Which, yes, would have been creepier, but I'm not sure it would have worked on Trek, really.
Do you know what this episode reminds me of?
What does this episode remind you of?
That Next Gen one where that mad scientist ends up beating Data.
Oh, cool, the schizoid man.
That's it.
I suppose there's a sort of sense. Yeah, well, you've got possession again. I mean, it's a Trek staple, isn't it? But I think it is done nicely differently here. And there's a creepiness about it that you don't necessarily get always in possession.
But doesn't Data not realise it's him? Or am I misremembering the schizoid man?
No, Ira Graves is in control all the time, so... Whereas here, actually, Bashir's in control most of the time.
Yeah.
It's just at the final vital moments, Vantika takes over.
Well, that's what it reminds me of. What made me think of.
Well, kind of. I mean, yeah. I think this is done nicely different enough that it doesn't matter that they're, in some ways, retreading old ground. Interestingly, Ira Stephen Bear wasn't keen on this story and felt it could just have easily been about Geordie and be a Next Generation episode. But I don't think it would have worked as well as a Next Generation episode, partly because you've got Quark. You've got the real darker side of Quark here, because he's definitely not on the side of the Angels here, is he?
No.
You get more of a sense that actually he will work against the regulars if it suits him. And here he's working for a very corrupt presence indeed. But also the fact that Deep Space Nine, because it feels a bit darker, you've got a sense that something nasty could happen to Bashir in a way that it never would happen to Geordie on Next Generation, let's face it.
I don't know, I think you're right that it is something that is better as a DS9 episode because of Quark, but I do think that there isn't anything particularly Bashiri about it, and it could be any other character on DS9.
No, I'm not saying it has to be Bashir, I'm just saying it has to be one of the...
I think it's better on DS9.
It works better on DS9 because there's that whole sense that they're in a more dangerous place.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that Vantika is going to come to Deep Space Nine as this sort of hub in order to operate out of the mercenaries and the dodgy characters like Quark who are on board the station.
But I think as well, the fact that the Deep Space Nine is so close to the wormhole, you can kind of see that dodgy people are going to use it because there's your quick getaway.
Yeah,
You're
quite.
in a completely different quadrant. So I think it has that as well. But I can kind of see Ira Stephen Bear's point that it is not particularly anything about any one character. It's not you could swap the character out. I don't think you could swap the place out.
The setting, yes. Yeah.
But you could swap the character.
Yeah, that's true. But it wouldn't have worked on the Enterprise.
No, I'm not sure it would have done, no.
Anyway, will you like the story?
Yeah. I didn't guess it until very nearly you got showed it.
Yeah.
I think actually that's really the only aspect that didn't work. Is that they're all like, we must shave Bashir, and I'm like, really? Must you? He's a cunt.
I think...
And I know he doesn't stay that way. No. But actually, at this point, you think of the conversations we've had, about him and his chat-up lines and his sleaziness and everything else.
He thinks he's the great I am healer. Bits of him being knocked down a peg or two as he realises that he's been used and actually he isn't the great I am.
No, but in terms of the episode, for me, the big flaw is that at this point in time, Bashir is a cunt. He thinks he's God's gift. Doesn't he?
He does.
He's an arse. And so
it's so hard because I can't divorce myself from how I know how he develops. So I can't watch this afresh. Is the problem.
See, I can. I can see how he is now and be frankly repulsed by him. And I want to smack him in the face.
Oh.
No, I do. At this stage, I do.
He's such a puppy.
No, he isn't. He's an arse. And so that means that when Sisko's like, we've got to get our man back, for me, this is why I kind of agree with Ira Stephen Bear. This would work better as Dax. It would be awesome if it was Kira, you know, or Odo, and maybe that's how this thing's going on with Primin, that maybe it's Odo that's been infected somehow. You could take one of the other regulars and it would work better than it does with having it as Bashir. And so for me, that stops it being an episode where I say, yeah, that's really good and I really liked it, because actually for me that's the key flaw.
All right, well, it doesn't bother me. Shall we hear from Sampo?
Yeah, and Sampo writes, "Hello, Orgs. Here's me feeding back on The Passenger. Overall, an enjoyable episode, hampered a bit by being extremely predictable, partly because you said in the last broadcast that it's a possession story."
Sorry. I wondered whether that was going to come up and bite me. Oh.
And there's you always saying to me, "Oh, you're showing your hand."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Eat
Sorry.
humble pie. Pie. Sampo says, "Didn't hurt the episode too much though. Is this a thing now? Every episode begins with Bashir being a dick? At least he's being a dick about something worthwhile this time, but still..." Yeah, I'm with you, he's a dick. "The Kobliad ship must have been cloaked or something, since at least I didn't see it. Hey look, it's Nataf!" Not that I would have recognised her, I just spotted her name after the opening credits. I quite like her character, especially her obsession with Vantika. The last scene with her is again nicely in the moral grey area. And it seems that this week, it's Quark's turn to stalk Jadzia. He makes it a lot more entertaining than Bashir. Yeah, it's true. Although, I think it's more entertaining because it's an Odo Quark scene. I'm not sure it would have been entertaining Quark on his own. Because you had Quark on his own doing the whole curves and being freaky and cheesy and yuck.
The whole Quark Dax thing does develop quite interestingly, but I'm not going to say anything more about that.
Okay. Anyway, talking about Bashir, he did quite a good bit of evil acting as Vantika. Nice to see him as something else than a dork for once. I also like the so-called B-plot of the episode, Lieutenant Primin helping Odo. What I like about it especially is that usually in these kind of plots the outsider security expert is a jerk until he makes a mistake and has a change of heart near the end of episode. But this time Primin is clearly the better person, doing everything he can to cooperate with Odo, but still getting nothing but flack in return. Nice twist on the otherwise much used plot. Can't think of anything else to say. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Sampo.
Thank you. Yes, and sorry.
I'm not so sure I'm convinced personally that the evil acting is good.
Yeah, you know, it's a curious one, that, isn't it? Because, yeah, I wasn't convinced by that either. It's partly because he's just talking so slowly. It just doesn't...
It's more like he's doing a Shatner impression, really.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think is the idea of talking slowly is somehow Bashir's personality fighting against...
Yes, you could argue that. Yeah.
And perhaps that's what Siddig El-Fadil was going for in his performance.
Shall we hear from the Mark?
Yes.
The Passenger, or I like evil possessed Dr. Bashir better than horny braggart Dr. Bashir. In a fairly routine plot-based mystery, Bashir's attempts to resuscitate the critically injured criminal who brain jumps the dock and somehow getting a criminal in his head makes him less of a jerk. The story doesn't deliver, and Siddig El-Fadil's performance as Vantika is all over the shop, with bizarre line delivery. Those reported to have been overdubbed in post-production.
Oh, that would make it bizarre, though, wouldn't it, if it's overdubbed?
The staggered speech of the Doctor just doesn't work. However, the level of ham that rises is fun. It's kind of getting onto the Shatner thing you were getting to, really, aren't you? But the technobabble is a whole new level of shite to solve the problem, and his agonised scream when he's hit with the technobabble is just awful. We also have the other side of the problem, in that a consciousness could be preserved so easily, and with such a small amount of material, and it's one more technology that creates potentially galaxy-shaking ramifications, but is never heard from again.
Yeah, it's true, actually. I didn't think that at the time watching it. It's bloody hell, how small is that? And he's got an entire consciousness in it.
Mm-hmm. And we end with a summary execution. If not out-and-out murder, and Jadzia had a smirk, if not a smile on her face, as it happens. That's just wrong. There is already dead interpretation. As long as his consciousness existed in a restorable state, I'd call that technically alive. Particularly when we have precedents in Trek for a preserved consciousness being considered a still-living entity, as with Sargon and Return to Tomorrow, oh blimey, or Spock's Catra in Search of Spock. Roll on the end of Season 2. Natov, aka Julie Caitlin Brown, was good. And we get a darker Quark than expected in terms of the crooks he works with. So what's next? Fuck. Move along home! Must be your turn to do a Deep Space Nine episode, dear.
Yeah.
So thank you, The Mark.
Thank you.
We also heard from Brandy.
And Brandy writes, let me preface this by stating that yes, I do well remember Move Along Home. And I still hate Paradise more. You'll just have to wait until we get to Paradise, but tish, to find out why.
Yeah.
Don't really have a lot to say about this episode. I keep having to remind myself that there wasn't Wikipedia back when this was made, and I have to forgive stupid assertions by doctors who say humans only use a small portion of their brains. Not true! Humans use all of their brains, just not all parts at the same time. But surely someone could have done a bit of research before putting us in a sci-fi series set hundreds of years in the future? Like ask an actual neurosurgeon or something? More than anything, this episode is a wasted opportunity. They had a chance to explore the darker side of the human mind, the idea of supplanting someone's consciousness with a more aggressive, even evil personality, and yet the most attention I can give to it is a small notch above boredom. It's obvious from the beginning what's happening, and at this point, dear Siddig Elfadil doesn't have the acting chops to pull off being slowly taken over by someone else's, well, soul, if you will. Which is a shame, as I've come to love Dr. Bashir in the following seasons. I'm up to Season 4, Episode 4, can't stop watching. I don't find him as annoying in this first series as others do, and this is my first time seeing most of these episodes, but I will never ever like Keiko, ever! Don't blame you. I don't.
She has a couple of good Next Gen episodes, but I'm not sure she has any good Deep Space Nine ones, to be honest.
I'm not sure she's nice in any of them.
She's good in the one where O'Brien's been possessed as a power play, and she's actually treated really badly, but she's very forgiving at the end, and we actually commented on the fact that
that's true.
that was a really good Keiko episode for a change.
Okay.
And I think there was one other one where she was all right.
Sadly, this episode is forgettable in almost every way. Well, actually, I can't argue with that because I forgot it.
You did, but that was to the advantage. You then enjoyed this episode having forgotten it the first time round.
Well, this is true, but yeah, it must be forgettable if I've forgotten it.
Yeah, it's not memorable in as much as it doesn't do anything original. I mean, it is just a possession story. As the one bit I remembered about it, which unfortunately rather spoiled it. But I do think it's done quite well, actually. But there you go.
No, I think it's mostly done well, but with the key flaw that it should have been a different character and not Bashir that was possessed.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Brandy continues. This episode is forgettable in almost every way, except the verbal exchanges between Odo. Thanks for that Inspector Gadget earworm. That's never going to go away now.
Sorry.
And Quark, especially where Dax is concerned. To me, those moments were the only interesting bits in the whole thing, and they're few and far between. Chalk up another one on the didn't like it, didn't hate it list. I just can't work up the energy to be terribly upset or thrilled by it. Yay, I got feedback in on time! And for the episodes you're actually covering, I might just have gotten my groove back. Still, I have 6 more weeks of intensive improv comedy classes starting up in the second week of July, so if I fall behind again, please know I'm with you in spirit. Love you guys, love the podcast, love Brandy. Thank you, Brandy!
Thank you, and enjoy your improv classes.
Yes!
Okay, let's hear what Dimbo Sama has to say about The Passenger.
Hello again, Orgs. Dimbo Sama here again, feeding back on The Passenger. So, I really like this episode. A little bit of a anecdote. For my birthday last year, my partner got me all of Deep Space Nine on DVD, and I did a little bit of a live blog on my Tumblr, and I remember describing this episode as smarmy and obnoxious criminal takes over Bashir's mind. No one notices until he steals a runabout. Which I feel is a pretty succinct summary of the episode. I really liked this episode. It's pretty well done. I have to say that Bashir's arrogance, both at the start of this episode, obviously that's to put up a smokescreen for Vantika, but Bashir's arrogance really makes a lot of sense for reasons that go into Section 31 territory. But when you know what you know, and you remember that DS9 is Bashir's first real placement out of the Academy, him being insufferable for the first season or so, makes a lot of sense and kind of makes him more watchable for me. It doesn't make him any more likable, but at least it gives you a reason. It makes it a lot easier to sit through. So, yeah. At least they did make him less insufferable as the show went on. but he's very good in this episode overall. Avantika as well was a pretty interesting villain. The fact that he appears as subconscious possessing another person is kind of cliche, but it was handled pretty well, so don't mind it too much. My favourite part, as is usually my favourite part with DS9, is Odo knocking heads with the Starfleet security officer. Basically, the root of it being that they're both very good and both very proud of their jobs, and the Starfleet officer, whose name escapes me even though I just watched the episode, does prove it several times in the episode. It makes it better than a just, oh, you're in my territory kind of pissing contest you'd expect it to be. And also the bait and switch with Kajada maybe being the person Avantika possessed, but then it turns out being Bashir was pretty decent as well. I don't have much to say aside from that. Thanks very much for the podcast. Looking forward to it as ever. I'm very sorry that Move Along Home is the next DS9 episode, but I'm sure we'll get a great broadcast out of it anyway, at the very least. So thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye. Nicely put. So, yes.
Nice.
They only discover that Bashir has been possessed when he steals a runabout.
Yes.
And nicely danced around section 31 there as well.
Yes, thank you.
Not had to use that in a while, thankfully.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see what Drew and Tracy make of this.
Hello, Peter and Emery. This is Drew and Tracy giving our feedback for Deep Space Nine episode The Passenger. That was an interesting one.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, yep.
A little bit of action going on there for Deep Space Nine, you know.
The teaser, I think they are just, every week he's setting up Bashir to be not a pleasant character, aren't they?
To be fair, you know, it wasn't that he wasn't a pleasant character. He was mind-warped, wasn't he?
No, but before that, just the beginning, when he didn't even have... I think I preferred him with the guy in him, actually. when he was just being like Dr. Smug.
Well, yeah, I mean, he does have like this... He is kind of like the opener, isn't he? And he, you know, normally he's...
this week can we...
he's trying to be like a Lothario, and he, you know, the worst person to be stuck in a cruiser with, Kira... I don't think you like me, you know, and it's just, you know, she's so harsh, to be fair, and he's trying to be a bit smooth.
Her shields are up.
Yeah, her shields are always up, to be fair.
When, as we now know, Bashir was talking to Quark at first, that was Voldemort, wasn't it?
It was Voldemort, yeah.
Voldemort, yeah.
Harry Potter.
It was. He was doing, was it Parcel Tongue?
He wasn't quite doing Parcel Tongue, but he was just...
I swear that was Voldemort.
It was Voldemort, we agreed on that. So we did laugh about how when Bashir was transported back to DS9,
yeah,
it managed to brush his hair.
Yeah, because one minute he was like brushing all his hair.
He was like the mad professor when he with like all his hair sticking all over again.
And it come out and he was back
and he was all pristine, wasn't he?
Smooth.
I think I'd even seen a little bit of gel going on in there as well, you know.
It did.
Only to be shot by Sisko. Harsh.
Mm.
So yeah, again, quite enjoyed that episode. Wasn't the worst one I've seen. Wasn't brilliant. A bit of excitement in there tonight.
Yeah, I think it's an average episode. Is it watchable, enjoyable?
Yeah, average Deep Space Nine. Managed to do my nails and keep an eye on the ball.
You did.
Thank you very much.
Lovely.
Bye. Bye. Oh, glad you enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
There's a likelihood of you enjoying the next one, isn't I?
No.
I like the idea of Kira's shields being up as well.
Yes.
That's nice.
Yes.
Yeah. The whole Bashir thing makes sense eventually, don't worry.
Yeah.
Well, therefore, we need to finish with Purry! Yay!
Hello again, Purry here to talk about The Passenger, an episode title which automatically has me going... and indeed you could have possessed Bashir singing it. I am the passenger. No, maybe not. So yes, it's an episode where Bashir gets possessed by an evil criminal. In its good parts, I do like the way they build up this murderer and how he's this sort of ultimate escape artist, immoral doctor, mad scientist bloke who keeps getting away from sort of the woman who's pursuing him. I thought they actually built him up rather well, considering that we only see the actual guy. at the beginning of the episode, more or less dead, and so to be able to build up that impression of him was quite good. Aside from that, I think the problem is this has been done so often, it's a hoary old trope, and when you're dealing with tropes, you really have to do them well. I think actually Voyager even did this one better, but that's possibly because it had Kess as a violent warlord, and suddenly you like Kess and kind of hope she'd stay that way. So, yeah, aside from that, the episode goes along fairly well. There is that kind of weird animosity they introduce with Primond. I was going to call him something else, but that might be Section 31. Yes, Primond, the Starfleet security guy. And I was never quite sure what they were intending with him. Was he meant to be an antagonist, someone who does things Starfleet's way and keep winding up Odo, or was it always meant to be this could be a jurisdictional thing, what Starfleet's, what's that? And it didn't really work, and I don't think I'm spoiling things too much to say that he doesn't stick around too long. He quickly gets forgotten about, which makes me think that the script writers had the idea of him and kind of ditched him. And he's kind of a bit of an irritating character, really. I'm quite glad that he didn't end up being a sort of semi-regular. So, yeah, aside from that, as I said, the episode rolls on quite well. I did like the sort of, I can't remember her name, but the woman who was hunting the murderer. I did thought she came off as quite driven, and indeed you could almost think she's nuts, except sadly because I was familiar with, I'm not sure if I was familiar with the episode, but just when the guy grabbed Bashir by the throat, I thought, I've seen this somewhere before, he's probably transferred, and I think that's the problem with it being the trope, you automatically know what happened. And I wasn't keen on Bashir's acting as the possessed. His speak very slowly with a slight whisper, and in fact, come to think of it, it's kind of similar to Benedict Cumberbatch's Khan from Star Trek Into Darkness. So, at least he watched some Star Trek for his performance, maybe. So yeah, overall, it's not awful, but it's not a particularly good episode. Like I say, I think because it is this hoary old trope which has been better executed elsewhere, it is interesting, I suppose, to see Quark doing some proper criminal stuff, not just slightly shady stuff. He's properly organising, he's virtually planning a heist, or at least he's organising the muscle for it, which is interesting, and it does give you that a bit more of the impression of him being a crook, which I do think we haven't always had. We've usually just had him as being a bit of a shady businessman, and this is him doing sort of proper criminality, and it is nice to see, a sort of harder edge to the characters. Yeah, Quark will arrange a group of thugs to steal a life-saving drug. But overall, it's just kind of, it's a bit flat, really. Not an awful episode, just not particularly good. I think unoriginal and not particularly well executed. So all I really have to add is do keep up the good work. Once again, thank you for doing the podcast, and I will talk to you about the next 2 episodes. Until then, bye for now.
Bye, sir. Yeah, Primin was always meant as a sort of a temporary fill-in for whilst Cole Meany was away filming, basically, so he was only ever going to be in a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they tried something and it didn't work. I mean, I think he works quite well, actually, in this episode, but ultimately he was only ever going to be temporary. And yeah, I mean, it is an old trope, the possession business.
It is.
There's no two ways about it. And that does diminish the episode a bit, but nowhere near as much as by the time you get to Voyager, and they're still doing this sort of episode with Kez that you care even less about.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing with Quark being even more shady than usual in this one is, as he points out, he's the with this, so he's kind of distancing himself from it a bit by just being the one who's facilitating the crime rather than the one that's actually committing the crime, which is an interesting distinction. It's one that he'll get involved with again in the future.
Yeah, I have vague memories of an episode quite late on, actually.
Yes, there is, with a very famous English actor in, but anyway, we'll come back to that. So, yes, there we go. I would agree, it's certainly not a classic, but I think it's quite a nice little episode.
Yeah.
Splendid stuff. Thank you to everybody who's contributed it. Blimey, it's late again. Next time, we shall be recording on Thursday the 10th of July, and we will be covering, well, surprise, surprise, Amri will be covering Move Along Home. She can't wait. She's been busting to cover this episode.
No, I haven't.
But at least when she covered it, it is behind us.
No, what I've done is I've decided that there was no way I was covering this without a drinking game. Now, bearing in mind the disaster that was the Darmok drinking game, I've decided that I just want to have things that make you drink, rather than mixing drinks and making you feel ill.
Right.
So, If anybody wants to join in, anytime anyone says either move along home or a la Moraine, take a drink.
Okay.
Now, some of them will back up. If memory serves, you get a la Moraine, count to 4, a la Moraine. So you're going to be taking some quick drinks. There may be some hiccuping. But the point is, what I'm trying to do is avoid mixing drinks. So you just have your drink, and that's when you do it. Anytime anyone says move along home or a la Moraine.
There we are. So that's your way to survive that episode, folks.
Yes, it is.
I will be really, really fascinated to see if it's as bad as we remember it being.
I have.
It does stick in the memory as being awful.
I remember. Oh, it's got fucking hopscotch in it. How can that be good?
And actors singing that really shouldn't sing.
Yeah.
That's never a good thing.
No.
Nana visitor.
And doesn't it also, as well as hopscotch, involve something akin to the brownie salute?
Yes, there's a hand gesture thing that goes on as well.
Yeah.
We have this joy to look forward to, guys. On the other hand, I shall be covering, for our Next Generation episode, A Fistful of Taters. Goodbye. Bye.
I am the passenger, and I ride through the city backsides. I see the stars come out of the sky. Yeah, the bright and hollow sky. You know it looks so good tonight.
The bOrgCast is brought to you by the lovely people at GeekPlanetOnline.com.
Music at the beginning of this podcast was written and performed by Adam Buxton and is used with his kind permission. All music referenced is for illustrative purposes only and no copyright infringement is intended.
To contact us, you can use the forums at GeekPlanetOnline.com.
Visit our Tumblr site at bOrgCast.tumblr.com where you'll find images accompanying the episodes discussed in this cast.
Send email messages or MP3s to bOrgCast@GeekPlanetOnline.com.
Or you can contact us via Twitter on rev_org or bOrgCastAmmo. Hashtag bOrgCast.
Get into the car. We'll be the passenger.
Warning. The following redacted conversation about episode numbering systems contains scenes of an extremely anally retentive nature, and listeners of a sane disposition may want to stop the episode now.
Yeah. He's got, by the way, this fucking chart thing he's done, where he gets
Planned it all
the
out.
good stuff.
No, what? Just
No, you've got all the good stuff, and I've got all the bad stuff.
What I've done is because I was aware quite early on that because season 1 of Deep Space Nine is shorter of season 6 of Next Generation, and also, of course, originally season 1 didn't start till later into season 6 of Next Generation. Therefore, we will run out of Deep Space Nine episodes. So I'm trying to pace ourselves out a bit. So I planned it all out to the end of the season, bOrgCast season 6, effectively, with who did which episode, alternating fairly. But I'm now going to have to replan that because Amory doesn't like the way that it's all worked out.
No, because I've got twice as many shit episodes as you.
So, yes. But basically, I am doing my best to ensure that we smooth out. There will be some bOrgCasts where we will just be covering Next Generation ones.
But they are two-parters.
They're either two-parters. There are a couple where we do a couple of one-parters, but that's just so that we don't end up running out of Deep Space Nine, and then the last couple of bOrgCasts of our season are all Next Generation, so I'm just spacing them out.
But bearing in mind that Deep Space Nine lasts longer than Next Gen, of course, we could just continue to do one Next Gen and one DS9 all the way through.
No, because then that would ruin my numbering system.
Why would it ruin your numbering?
Because season 6 of the bOrgCast covers season 6 of Next Generation and season 1 of Deep Space Nine, okay? So if we start muddling in the season, putting in season 2 Deep Space Nine, that fucks it all up then, because bOrgCast season 7 will be season 7 of Next Gen and season 2 of Deep Space Nine, And then we'll have a bOrgCast Season 8, which will be purely Deep Space Nine Season 3. I've got it all planned out.
Yeah, but as long
And I'm not at all anal retentive, honestly.
Yeah. The thing is, my thinking is, right, the bOrgCast seasons match the Next Gen season. So we just go up to a higher number of 6s or something. And it doesn't matter where Deep Space Nine comes in any orbit.
No, it does. No, we've got to do it properly.
We've got to do it fairly.
Yeah, no.
That means that we can change things so that you get a load of shit to do as well as me.
I'm quite happy at altering the order of who does which, but we can't alter the order of when we do them.
Why not?
Because that fucks up the numbering system.
Why? Because the numbering system is based on Next Gen. As long as you
that's the beauty. That's the genius of the system. Is that it isn't just reflecting Next Gen, it's also reflecting Deep Space Nine. So if you take 5 off the bOrgCast figure, you'll get the Deep Space Nine season number as well, consistently throughout.
Right. Does anybody need to know that? Does anybody need to do that ever? Did anybody
do we include
give
this?
a flying fuck
well,
whether that was possible or not before you said it? All you've done is decided that your numbers are more important than whether or not I kill you because I have watched too many shit episodes.
We can get round the watching shit episodes one quite easily by just altering the order of which episode comes first out of Deep Space Nine and Next Gen.
As long as you're willing to do that, I'm happy to let you remain anally retentive.
Thank you.
What I'm not prepared to do is me always watching the shit ones without enough beer because of your fucking numbering system.
I am, however, unconvinced that people are going to want to hear the 10-minute explanation of my numbering system, so this is going to now get edited.
Fine. Why the fuck did you end up with that numbering system?
It's a genius. It's a genius numbering system that I'm really proud of.
Right, you sad
Don't you belittle my numbering system.
You realise that Matt Dillon will find this whole thing hysterical if we keep it in. And so potentially might a number of other people. The reason you want to edit it out is because it humiliates you.
No. The reason I'm thinking of editing it out is because I think it's going to bore the pants off people. They'll all end up as Commando Sisko. And on that note, we'll say cheery bye. Cheery bye.
Bye.
Yes, I don't know what I'll do about that now.